What is up? It's Lit Book Reviews is back in your life. I'm Suetonius. With me, as always, is Livy, and this is the podcast where we discuss all things books. And today, we're going to discuss the man, the myth, the legend. I feel like that's actually the best time to use that phrase. Would you agree?
It really
for
is.
today's subject? It's
After
none
reading
other
this
than
book, yes.
exactly. It's none other than Julius Caesar. And this book is titled Julius Caesar by Philip Freeman. That is the topic of discussion here today. So you may have heard of him. I'm sure you have. We actually have a video covering some other books that discuss the history of Rome, but this one specifically is about the man himself. So this book, again, titled Julius Caesar by Philip Freeman, came out in 2008. Oh, dude, it came out May 13th, 2008. That was my birthday. That was my 13th birthday, dude.
I mean,
Shout out to 13-year-old me.
that's
What
huge.
a legend. So in the last, how many, math is not my strong suit. What's that, 17 years?
Yeah.
In the last 17 years, we've accumulated a massive 2,700 ratings on this book on Goodreads. 4.33 out of 5 stars is the average on that. So we're going to discuss this book, discuss some interesting things we've learned about Julius Caesar and the Roman Republic,
This isn't
which
your
became
first
the
book
Roman
you've read from
Empire.
him, right? Did you read Hannibal? His one on Hannibal? Or do you just... I know you own it, I feel like.
Is that the one I read? Oh, yeah, that is the one I read. I didn't even realize that, dude. This is the second
Okay,
book I've
yeah.
read by Philip Freeman, and that was a really good book. It's really short, but it was good. Wow, dude. I'm so glad you made that connection for me.
I
I
was
did
just
not
looking at
realize that.
what he's written, and I saw that he has Hannibal, one on Alexander the Great, one on Celtic mythology. This is his second most popular book. It looks like that Alexander the Great one he has is his most popular. Do you have that one or no?
No, I've got a couple other on the Great, but not the one by him. I've got the Adrian Goldsworthy one about him and his
Okay.
dad, a couple others. But anyway, so yeah, Julius Caesar, a biography about the man. I gave this 5 stars. What about you?
I did as well. And just for the integrity of BookTube, I did audible this book. Jesse did not. I just
Yeah,
want to
just
be
to be clear,
honest.
me, the one in the red Braves t-shirt named Jesse, I read the book physically. The other guy
Yeah.
listened. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I'm glad that I listened to this though. This was
Me too.
I know you've been kind of on me about getting into ancient history, and it's not that I haven't been interested in it. I don't know. It's just, I mean, you know how it is. It's like finding the time to do
Yeah.
it. And so while I wish I would have read this book, because I definitely would have gotten more out of it, bro, who knows when that would have been? So it's like, all
Yeah.
right, I got layer 1 in now. I'm
Yeah.
definitely saving the Tom Holland books to read physically. I don't
Oh,
want to
for sure.
audible any of those. So
Yeah.
that's why I kind of was like, all right, I'll audible these just so I can have a base layer. And dude, I'm glad, man, because I just like to kind of, I guess, get into it. And I wish yours had the forward of
Maybe it
Philip
did. I'm glad you
Freeman.
said that.
So essentially, for anyone interested, in this, like Philip Freeman, I guess, is a professor. In the very beginning, he talks about how, like, he was teaching some class, I think, on like Latin, like sentence structure, something that's like very boring, and he could tell his class was zoning out, and so he just kind of decided to detour and ask them who, like, ask the class what they knew about Caesar, Julius Caesar, that is, and he realized they didn't know anything about him. And so he just started like giving a 5-10 minute like overview of it, and he realized that his whole class got like super engaged when he started telling like just real things that happened in Julius Caesar's life.
Yeah.
And he was like, wait, do people not, like, does the average person not know? And he realized that. And so, I mean, I knew who he was, but especially when it comes to Roman history, it's so like, especially when you hear the word Caesar, it's like, who is that again? Like, because it just kind of gets morphed into other, like, of the other people that come after him, and the name structure in
Yeah.
Roman history is kind of confusing at first, like from an
Yeah.
outsider's perspective.
Mhm.
But dude, I mean, his life, bro, is crazy. Like this book, I feel like it's very concise. The Audible was great. Like it wasn't hard to follow, which especially nonfiction books for me, usually I don't like doing that because they're usually pretty tough to follow with all the names and stuff. But because he's just so quick at it, and because, bro, so much of the stuff that happens is like, what? It
Oh,
doesn't,
yeah.
like, some of it's like that doesn't even seem real. And the fact that he survives as long as he does, I mean, anyway, I mean, we'll get into like some of the crazy things he does, but it's like, I couldn't recommend this Audible enough for anyone who has no idea about the Roman Empire, because he does a really good job of giving context of the time, but then also of the other people around him. And so anyway, it was just a very entertaining read. I mean, I did this in like 2 days at work, 2, 3 days maybe. I think it's like 14
Yeah.
hours total if you listen to it at 1 point speed, which it's only like 9 hours if you listen to it at like 1.5, which the author is kind of slower. So it's easy to do that. But yeah, I mean, I was so glad that I got to this sooner rather than later.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm glad you got into it. It was a really good read. I mean, reading Roman history, ancient history at all is kind of, at least for me, I don't know. I feel like I've read a lot of ancient history, but still every time I read it,
Yeah,
there is like an adjustment to understanding the politics and, the regions, like the nations, everything, the government, religious practices, all that stuff. There's just a lot that goes into it, and
yeah.
it's so different from our time. But yeah, Philip Freeman's great in this book at breaking it down for you in an easy to understand way. But like you said, it doesn't ever lose, its gravitas, if you will. So yeah, I would recommend this book to anybody that wants to get into Roman
Seriously,
history
yeah.
or Julius Caesar. It's not a long book. I mean, mine ends at 362 before like the notes and stuff. So the actual readable bit is like around 350. And I do have that forward in here. I just did not see it. It's like before the timeline and before the table of
Uh,
contents, and I just didn't see it, bro. I went straight to the introduction. But hey, what are you gonna do?
exactly.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, great book, fascinating character. I think, and we'll get into why, and what
Is
it
this your
really
first
means.
Julius Caesar book? You've read others, right? Or
It's my first biography that's just
okay,
specifically about him, but I've read several things that he's a major
encompass
player in.
them.
I mean,
Yeah,
he's kind of the guy of this era. So,
yeah,
um, but yeah, Rubicon is pretty much all about Julius Caesar,
yeah.
um,
Okay.
by Tom Holland. But the book ends, and this isn't really a spoiler. The book ends. It goes into the future to the American Revolution era, and there's a conversation between Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. They're in
Yeah,
Thomas Jefferson's house, and Jefferson shows Hamilton his portraits of Francis Bacon, Isaac Newton, and John Locke as the three greatest men in world history. Hamilton, a Republican to the core, spoke for many when he shook his head and reluctantly proclaimed, "The greatest man who ever lived was Julius Caesar."
I got
Um,
chills, bro, when the Audible read that. I was like,
I mean, it was such a way to end a
especially
book,
after the
especially
end of
as
the
an
book. Yeah,
American. Like, it's yeah, after the whole
yeah.
book, which was great, it just that landed pretty heavy. But yeah, and great doesn't mean good person morally or anything, but the
No,
things he
yeah,
accomplished and just I mean, it's dude, I told you this when I read Rubicon, especially, but all of Tom Holland's books. But it was the same with this. Doesn't it feel like you're just all you're missing is a magic system, but it feels like fantasy, like the
yeah.
best high fantasy other than that?
It does,
Like,
man.
it's just
Especially
so epic.
well, there's so much violence, which is insane. The violence is crazy,
Yeah.
but dude, the political intrigue is
Oh,
top tier. It is like an
it's
author wrote it.
crazy.
Like the way that Caesar just seemingly knows when to kill everyone and then when to like show mercy. Like he's
Right.
just so good at like I mean, obviously there were times where he didn't do the best job, especially towards the end. He made some bad decisions with not reading the room. But bro, especially for that time and how complicated the system was with remaining a consul and like all these different nuances that just really mattered back then. Bro, he was just
Yeah.
always a step ahead, and just the way his army loved him because of just all these little moves he was
Yeah.
always making for the boys. It's like
Mhm.
it truly does feel like fiction. I think I put that in my review on Goodreads that it's just you're right, man. It feels like someone's writing his story out. So it's like, bro, I just wonder what it would have been
It
like
really
to be
does.
like actually be there. And
Yeah,
bro,
and the
especially when you think
level
about it's before Jesus, dude. So when you think about like history and like try and conceptualize how long ago certain things are, Christianity did not exist.
I know, that's
When
crazy.
Caesar was not only
I mean, he died in
doing what
44 BC.
yeah,
It's
and the
crazy.
thing is the places he went to and the people he conquered, bro, I mean, it's from the British Isles to Egypt to like Mesopotamia, like, modern day Turkey, I guess even close to Iran. It's like, bro, I mean,
Mhm.
that's a long way to travel
He's
in
all over yonder.
50 BC, you know? So,
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that he lives as long as he does in heightened violence. I mean, bro, you're right. It
Yeah.
just that's why I mean I can't believe it took me so long to get into this because I guess I just thought there wasn't enough source work, but I feel like Freeman does a good job of saying when they know stuff and when they don't know stuff. And then when they don't know
Yeah.
stuff, he says what they know about the era. So instead of like,
Right.
I can't necessarily tell you exactly what happened during this part, but normally they go into battle like this. Normally they do that. But I
Yeah.
guess there was still a shocking amount of details though. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy how I mean, I'll never understand how ancient historians gather source I mean, some of what they're piecing together all these little different fragments that they get from archaeology and whatever
from a
they
culture,
discover.
bro. You'll get so
They
much from a
find
single.
I mean, dude, they find one piece of broken pottery at a certain level in the mantle of the earth, and they're like, "Okay, in this era, they did this at dinner time." And it's just like, "All right." I mean, that I guess, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Um, but yeah, it is wild how they kinda compile it, and he's obviously made a book here. I mean, again, it's not very long. He's made a book that is very approachable for I feel like just about anyone, unless you
Yeah, I
just
do too.
absolutely cannot be grabbed by the allure of ancient history. Because the thing about ancient history that's fun is when you're reading a book, say, about World War II, just about everything you're reading about, there's multiple documents to support it. There's video of people talking about, there's documentaries with World War II veterans in them. And we know
Yeah.
in many situations, moment by moment, conversation, occurrences, everything about it. Where with ancient history, so much of what they're taking in, there's a lot of conjecture and inferences. There's so many different little pieces like, a lot of what we know about Julius Caesar was written by, I think, Tacticus, whatever his name is, who was alive 100 years after Julius Caesar. And he got some of his information through someone who was, biased one way or another. And then another ancient
Yeah.
historian hated Caesar, one loved him, that type of thing. So, but it's fun because it can have that perfect level of mystery that makes someone like Julius Caesar seem so, I don't even know what the word is, but it's why someone like Alexander Hamilton would say he's the greatest man of all time because all we
Yeah.
know of him, and obviously the victors write history, so who knows what was exaggerated for, greater effect in his favor, but there's just so much allure to this story. I mean, it's why we
Yeah.
like fiction and fantasy stories and epic adventures. Like he lived one and then on top of that died a tragic death. I mean, the
Oh,
most
man.
it couldn't be more tragic. Um, so it's just, dude, his life is a wild ride, man. It's a
It is.
wild ride. He's like
What
George
makes
Washington on crack because in the
Yeah.
Revolutionary era, we talk about how Americans at the time, that were fighting in the Revolutionary War worshiped George Washington and would have made him king if he had accepted it. It feels like what you were just saying with his army, with Julius Caesar and his army. I mean, they worshipped him like a god, it felt like. I mean, they didn't.
Yeah.
They bucked up a few times, but the moment he even looked their way, they were
Yeah.
immediately on their knees crying,
Really
saying
my
they'd give
fault.
their lives for him. Like
Yeah.
that's on me, Caesar. Let's go to war.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it was such a great book, and I'm so glad you read it.
Me too, dude. And now, I mean, so now you're almost done with Augustus. And so now it's like, I mean, all
Hmm.
right, I got a couple more Audible credits. Let's ride, dude. Now,
Let's
I
ride,
mean,
bro.
that's
Let's go
the
all the
that's
way to
the
Nero.
dangerous part. Dude, that's the dangerous part, bro, about history. If you read something nice like this, then it's like, bro, I'm in the middle of right now I'm in the middle of Iron Kingdom, which is Christopher Clark's like expansive work on the rise and fall of Prussia. And dude, it's just right now I'm in like the late 17. I'm like maybe 200 pages in, late 1700s, really going in through the niche work of the move from like Lutheran principles to Calvinist principles and how that affected land ownership and the move from the serfdom to whatever. It's like, I mean, it's just not the same as, you know, getting kidnapped by
The
pirates
crossing
and
of
then
the
crucifying
Rubicon.
them. Yeah. So it's just, I'm just not there yet. So that's the only tough thing, man, is now I'm kind of hyped up, so it's harder to
Yeah.
get back into the trenches of like a thick boy right now for me. But it's
And
good,
what's
dude. I'm
crazy, man, is because I read those Tom Holland books, it goes over I think the first 12 or 14 Caesars, which, by the way, shout out Tom Holland right there. I have his new book, which is his translation of
Plutarch.
The Lives of the Caesars by Suetonius, the ancient
Suetonius,
historian.
yeah.
So that's where a lot of our source material comes from, is from that book right there.
Yeah.
But anyway, dude, they're all like that. Not to get away from Julius Caesar, so we're going to talk more specifically about his life. But you go to Augustus next, and then I think Tiberius, Claudius, Caligula, Nero, bro. They're all like a
Crazy.
horrifying, like crazy movie. Each one of them, the same way that this one is, and a lot of
Yeah,
it's in really sick and twisted ways. Because we'll get into it. But these Romans were savages, like
they
absolute.
were.
They walked around in togas and had a senate like they were civilized people. They were not, dude. They were absolute savages. Um,
Yeah. It was
so yeah,
still
man,
before
it's a great
Christianity
book.
existed, and there's a reason for that, you know? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. These were
they
the
were
people who
civilized.
did later crucify Jesus.
Yeah. What's crazy, though,
But
is they are the most civilized probably of in the world at that time, you know? If
yeah,
you
which is
compare them to,
wild.
like, the Germans and the Gauls and I mean,
Yeah,
so
yeah, it's pretty wild. So yeah, this book's great. There's really not much to say without just going into what would be considered spoilers if you haven't read anything about Julius Caesar. And if you don't know anything, it's better for you to take it through a well-written book like this than us.
yeah.
So if you don't want to be spoiled about all the different things that happen in his life, you want to read it in a good book, go check out Julius Caesar by Philip Freeman and come back and let us know what you thought. Or check out Rubicon by Tom Holland. It's an amazing book by another great author. But again, It's Lit Book Reviews would highly recommend that you check this book out. Honestly, regardless of what you're into, I would tell you to at least try it. I mean, it's a short
Yes,
book. It catches you pretty quick. Um, and it really never lets up. That's one thing I'll say too
it
before we
doesn't.
get into the specifics. The pace of this book, again, we're talking as if it's a novel with a narrative, but the pacing is amazing, as if it is a
It
really
is.
well written novel.
Bro, and the
And
Audible
obviously,
is really
again,
good too. So, I mean, if you're, like, intimidated to try and pick up and read a book,
yeah,
it's is easily digestible too, Audible-wise.
yeah, and you're gonna learn. It's so rich to learn about this era and Julius Caesar because regardless of what you think about the figure, like, this is important to all Western society. Like, these
It's
are so
foundational.
much of our roots are in Roman society. Western philosophy comes from, this era and the surrounding eras. But, yeah, definitely get into it. It's Lit Book Reviews approves of, Julius Caesar by Philip Freeman. So, check out if you don't wanna know the dirty deets, and they are dirty.
Dirty deeds.
So I mean, let's get into it, dude. And let's try if we can to like go through his life in chronological order, quickly here.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess the thing that you just mentioned with the pirates is early, right?
That's early. That's before he gets shipped off to Gaul, right? I don't know if he's
Yeah.
even so he hasn't gotten his consulship. I mean, that was just the first thing I think one of the first things I even told you, I think I was maybe a third of the way through, and it just kind of showed who like Julius Caesar was when he gets captured by these pirates. I can't even remember where he's going. And they kind of figure out, I guess they can get something for him. And I can't even remember how much they offer. They're like, all right, we're going to try and
It's
get this
20
much money.
units, but I can't remember what
Yeah.
the like sextusers,
Okay.
sestusers. I can't remember. I don't
Yeah.
know how to say 'em.
But he's basically like, that's not enough.
Yeah, he raises it
Like
to
before they
50.
even get to the bargain board, he's like, actually, you need to raise this. You need to
He's
ask
like,
more for
you
me.
don't
It's
know
like,
who you're dealing with. 20 is not enough. Let's bump that up to
what a
50, and you get
savage.
get your money's worth.
I mean, that's
And yeah, it's
just,
crazy because it's reported that he gets along with them pretty well. Like they're kind of
yeah.
chopping it up, playing cards or doing whatever. Um, and then he finally gets free of them and immediately turns around with like an army to go find them and crucifies them. It was just like very early on, you're like, oh, this is the kind of guy he is.
He
And you got
must
to
have had
imagine
just,
some of them had to have been like low key as boys.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel like his charisma was 1000. I mean,
Oh
he
yeah.
just clearly exuded confidence. I mean, they talked about how he was a taller guy. I guess the only kind of downfall was he was kind of balding and tried to, I mean, I guess later on,
I mean, he
like,
rocked it though,
kind of
bro. They
cover that
said he
off.
like combed it over and like, and you can,
Yeah.
and like depictions of him, that one famous one of him kind of sitting back while people are coming to talk to him or whatever. You can see, I think it's also the way his little crown type thing he wears later in life looks,
Yeah.
but he kind of makes the hair because he's balding like on the top, and he makes the hair on the sides like kind of go up like this. So, I mean, he
Yeah.
was styling it, bro.
He knew what he was doing. They said he had style
Boy was
too, and
slanging.
The other thing that like stuck out, I guess, or that Freeman, I guess, points out that maybe is a key to why he had success too, is that I mean, you'll have to give more context to this or correct me when I'm kind of speaking, but I guess to like really give an overview and not detail wise, he was from, I guess, a noble family, but like a poor noble family. Is that right? So where he grew up is not where most others would have grown up. And that kind of maybe gave him an edge because he was maybe a little bit more grounded as far as knowing what was
Yeah.
going on with the everyday people.
Yeah, I don't know if he was poor necessarily, but they definitely weren't rich, and he was very much immersed in, like, blue collar society, if you will, to
Yeah.
use, modern colloquialism. So he was a man of the people, for sure,
Yeah.
especially in those early years.
Which I mean, I feel like that completely separates him because I mean, I'm not even going to try and attempt to step in and correctly lay out the groundwork for the Roman government at this point. I mean, I guess theoretically it is a republic. They had a dictatorship before and that was overthrown. And so I guess big picture out, like there's a select group of people who vote, but then there's also the large populist people that can vote. There's nuances there that I kind of get, kind of don't. It seemed like the Roman law was very complex anyway, like kind of on purpose so that people could find loopholes. Um,
Yeah, I mean, a famous quote about the Roman government from an ancient, like a contemporary, is that like essentially, I'm surprised that they were able to ever get anything done
yeah,
because there were essentially just an insane amount of checks and balances. But the problem with the republic was also the common problem you see in many governments that gain great power is all the policy and all the money where money was going was being decided by the few. So it was
yeah,
definitely a rich get richer, poor get poorer to a degree type thing going on. And they were, encompassing more and more territory. So more the rich again, the rich got richer. So
yeah,
um, yeah, it was pretty wild. And Philip Freeman does a great job of kind of immersing you in the culture and society of Rome. Um, but anyway, so early on in Caesar's life, the pirate thing happens. That's a kind of a one-off, but essentially he's going through whatever it's called, like the honors or whatever, the path of
yeah,
honor, something like that. So he basically gets different government positions, starts out small and makes his way up. And what everybody wants to get to is the consulship, which is essentially there's two consuls. They're voted on by the Senate, I believe, if that's correct. I might
yeah,
be misremembering. But essentially, those guys rule pretty much unilaterally together for 1 year, and then after your consul, you're like a member of the Senate for life. You can go be a proconsul somewhere and be a governor somewhere, that type of different stuff. But usually, you're a governor before you're a consul. So afterwards, you'd be a proconsular governor. So yeah, there's all these different little terms and different ways they
yeah,
do things. But the Senate, what's interesting about the Senate, to like give more background, and again, I'm no expert, because it can get very confusing, especially in this era because we're going from a republic and then it starts to become an empire. So things kind of change. So even when
yeah,
you feel like you're starting to get a grasp on how things are, it changes when Caesar really comes to power. Um, but the Senate, like, they don't make law. They just debate stuff and suggest things very heavily, and they definitely have power to sway decisions, and you really can't go against them. But the way it was set up was that they didn't actually put laws into place or enforce laws. And another thing that's interesting about Rome is there's no police, there's
that's
no
crazy. Yeah,
hospitals. Like when we get down later, and especially in the era of Augustus, when there's proscriptions where there's this list of people that need to be killed, like there's no police force to go do that. Citizens are doing that to other
yeah,
citizens and getting paid for it. So no police force. Like it's just that's the thing I told you the other day is actually getting when an author can get you into the mind frame and context of the culture and the society that Julius Caesar lives in, it almost feels like an out of body experience because you don't realize
yeah,
how difficult it actually is to understand their society because it was so drastically different than ours. Even the things that we see that are similar are really only similar on the surface for the most part. You know what I
yeah.
mean? The
It's a
motives are
totally different
different. Like
experience.
it's totally different. Um,
And
but
it's
anyway,
crazy
so
too that it's so I mean, I guess that probably leads into the importance of like why having your own, I guess if you're a certain level, I wouldn't know the term for it. I mean, I know Caesar ends up essentially you want to have your own military backing. You want to like find a group of people and empower them, and then use them as like
Yeah,
a military faction that I guess you're using technically for Rome, but they're more loyal
yeah,
to you because you're their benefactor than they are to like Rome as a whole.
yeah.
And so
You
then
want a
it's like,
governorship so that you can go raise an army,
yeah,
essentially, is what
exactly.
you want. But before we get to where Caesar starts building his power, leading up to the Gallic Wars, he creates the triumvirate with
Mm,
Pompey and Crassus. So that's really important. Essentially, Caesar's making his way up. He's rich at this point. He's had some wins here and there. He's spoken in the Senate. Different things have gone down. He's got some established characters in his life that we know of from history, namely Cicero and Cato. Cicero was a lawyer, famously known as the best orator of the time, perhaps the best in Roman history. And Cato was a senator, was a consul at one point, and he was basically a hardcore traditional Republican. And he's Caesar's greatest enemy until the day he dies. And we'll get to
yeah,
that later. Whereas Caesar, we'll see throughout, is really progressive and essentially long term wants to liquidate the Republic and turn it into something different. But he goes into this triumvirate with Pompey the Great and Crassus, and essentially they're running Rome, regardless of who the consuls are or whatever. At least this is their goal. It doesn't initially get to this point, but their goal is to run everything, to control the consuls, control the other arms of government, so that they can amass power and do what they want. And again, that is mainly through getting a governorship. So walk us through Gaul, man. Tell us about those
dude.
Gallic Wars.
Gaul in general, man, this is the most interesting part of the book to me, because it
Mhm.
feels the most kind of like fantasy. And it's funny
Yeah.
how, essentially, so first of all, Gaul, for anyone who doesn't know, because I didn't, I mean, later on, because when you're starting to read this like well, I guess like ancient history moving into the Middle Ages, like Gaul ends up being like France, Switzerland, Germany. It's that kind of central part of Europe, like the western central part, I would say, um, like all the way up to the British Isles. Um, so anyway,
Where the world
they
wars end up happening later, essentially.
exactly boots on the ground, World War I, World War II. Uh, and so he goes in there, starts kind of doing his thing, obviously, and it's just you can tell how Rome was so much further, like their advancement in certain areas was just top tier. I mean, it just seems like he's always undermanned and wins every time. And like the thing that sticks out the most to me is they're just doing everything on the fly. So like Caesar pulls up,
I pull up.
I'll pull up
I
some Gaelic
pull up.
tribe is is basically, they just always, not always, but it just baffles me that some of these Gaelic tribes are like, hey, why don't, like, we're actually gonna oppose Caesar and we're gonna like beat him after he's just massacred these other villages, but he'll just show up and they'll like try and act like they're going to be peaceful, and they don't. And then he's doing some type of siege work where all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, now we're going to build 6 miles of a wall that we'll use to just infiltrate. And it's like, how do they know how to do all this stuff? Like, we're going to just cross this river
Yeah,
now,
dude, the
we're going to
building
build
of
a
the
bridge in
walls,
a
bro,
day. It's like,
and the
bro,
double walled wall, like, it's like, bro, this
their
is crazy.
engineer work was what stuck out the most to me. Is like,
Yeah,
all right, he
bridging
just could,
rivers.
yeah, he could just envision something, and then I know like that's not the point of the book, so Freeman doesn't necessarily go into the architecture of exactly how they're doing it, but that's what sticks out to me is how their technology, and then especially the way that they fight in groups, I guess, compared to like in Gaul, there's like an honor to fighting where it's kind of more one on one, it seems like, whereas Roman legions are all about, I guess, fighting as a unit.
They're on a
And
grid, bro, they look like downtown Chicago
they do,
rolling up
and
on the
they're
battlefield.
effective, bro. And the thing is Julius is on the front lines with the boys at times. It's like
Yeah,
he
there's
he
times
just
where
seems like an
he's in there
absolute dog, but his
for sure.
ability to scan a battlefield and then just kind of know what to do,
Mhm.
um, is what's so impressive to me. Obviously ends up going back and forth. I think it's what, like 8 years or something that it takes for Gaul to fully be conquered. And then that siege of Alesia where he does the two walls is kind of like the big like tipping point. And bro, he does
Yeah.
just some savage things. I want to like just read this one part. So there's a part where he goes. does his thing, has some I can't remember which. First of all, the Gaelic tribe names are crazy, bro. They don't even sound like names
Oh,
of
yeah, they're
tribes you
wild.
would think for they sound almost like Native American or something, like when
Mm.
they're I was listening to the Audible. So anyway, but he, they have some partnerships there. He does his thing. He'll go back and forth to like do stuff back in Rome. But essentially some people that had, this is a very big
Well, he
overview.
stays in
I'm not.
Gaul the whole time that he's there, but he
Oh,
does
yeah,
go to,
yeah.
like,
Northern
Illyrium
Italy.
and other places that are yeah, sorry.
It's just
Had to
whenever
jump in
he
there in
goes
case
back
Tom
though, and
Holland
there's that,
listens and checks us on our
and he's like,
facts.
these guys are, yeah.
Come on, guys.
But the fact that he goes back and whoever the one guy is whose name is kind of crazy, um, I lost his name, but anyway, you know who I'm talking about. There's one Gaelic leader who I guess unites everybody and convinces people to kind of go back
Yeah,
on a lot of their loyalties to Caesar. And so one of the groups, it's in 51 BC. It's man, I'm not even going to try and say this name. It's Uxellod, Ulixodonum or something like that. It's on the final stages of the war. So this is at that point where he starts kind of, and this is what we were talking about before. His ability to sense when to forgive and when to kill everyone is, I feel like, unmatched. But in this instance, so he cuts off the fortress water supply. He makes a harsh example. I think this is the time where they start sending their women and children out to say like, "Hey, just send them into slavery. Like, send us into slavery so we don't die." And he just sends them back.
yeah. He's
And
like, "Get back
so
in there,
he
starve."
promises they're like, "All right, we're going to surrender, but you have to promise not to kill us." And he's like, "Okay, I promise I won't kill you." And so instead of killing them when they come out, he cuts all of both, like everyone's both hands get cut off. And it's just like,
Yeah,
I mean,
that was so savage.
that just stuck out to me. It's like, all right, this is the last group,
Yeah,
and he's going to show that he's going to show mercy, but it's like
yeah,
he's going to be a little nuance there to where he's going to show, hey, I'm
yeah.
him. So y'all remember
Well, I
this when
think a
y'all want to think
big
about uprising again.
yeah, don't forget about these hands. I think a big thing about Julius Caesar as well was they always talk about how he did show mercy and was, had clemency and all that type of stuff going on, but it was only the first time. Like he would show mercy and
Yeah,
let people do their thing after the battle's over, after we've decided who's boss around here, that type of thing. But if he left and had to come back, it is very reminiscent of Genghis Khan when I read that book by I think Jack Weatherford about him. When Genghis
yeah,
Khan pacified an area and left, if they rose up, he would send an army back and have them all slaughtered. And Caesar essentially did the same thing. If we come to terms after a battle or a war, and then you turn your back after I leave, I'm not showing mercy this time. All the men are dying and all the women and children are being sold into slavery, which is crazy. And again,
yeah,
I kind of hinted at it earlier. There's no point in trying to apply our morality to this figure. They're all evil. Everyone in Roman history is evil in as far as our morality is concerned. But again, totally different time we're talking about. So even though, as far as we're concerned, that's a terrible thing to do, that was pretty much par the course. I think is par for the
yeah.
course. Is that what do you say?
Part of the
Par the
course,
green,
yeah. Par for the
hit the
course.
birdie. Um, that was what you did. You weren't going to feed them or take them back to your city. So you're like, let's at least get some money for them.
Yeah,
So you would just sell them. But one thing that stuck out to me also in regards to that about the Gallic War specifically was when he'd conquer a tribe, leave their place, he'd leave like a few representatives behind, but he wouldn't leave an army that could fight back the whole city if they rose up. So inevitably, he would have to go back and, like we just said, kill them, sell them, whatever he did. Sometimes show mercy, but most of the time, if it was the second time, they're done. But one thing he said that I thought was so interesting was he writes something, and I wish I had written it down somewhere so I could say it specifically, but to paraphrase, this tribe rises back up after he's already defeated them, and he basically says, I can't blame them. They're just fighting for their liberty. Like, I respect
yeah,
that. But I'm going back and I'm going to kill them because I am the ruler of Gaul. And Philip Freeman makes this really good point that, a lot of times throughout history, especially if you look like at, say, the neocons of today's America, like there's this idea of spreading democracy or spreading your cultural values to make
yeah,
the world better. And Philip Freeman basically says Romans were not kidding themselves. They didn't tell themselves that they were doing this for the betterment of humanity to spread the Roman world. They did that effectively by causation, because they conquered so many areas. Not to say it was better, but they did spread their culture to a degree. But that wasn't why they did it. They did it because they wanted to conquer, because that's who they
Yeah.
were. And so I thought that was just a really interesting thing, how these people were very, front facing about what they were and what they were doing. And there was no shame in that at the time. There was no question of, should we do this? It was just, we are better than them. We're stronger than them. We can conquer them. So we will. I mean, he literally, that's his famous quote is, I came, I saw, I conquered. And like, that was it. That was
He
the
was being a
mentality.
savage. Asia Minor, he was being different, dude. He was on a
Yeah.
different
He was
arc.
on one. He was on one later in life.
But his ability to adapt too, man, is just unmatched. Because I mean, I know we don't really have it here in our notes, but when he kind of briefly goes to, Britain on his 2 different times, I mean, bro, he's just there, and there's all these different ways that they're fighting that he's not used to, and it kind of they take some L's because of that. But I mean, he's not going to be fooled twice. You can tell. Like Caesar is one of those guys
yeah,
where he'll get fooled once, and he's like, "Oh, okay, this is how you do this," and then he's going to use that next time. Like now, it's just like he's
yeah.
filing it in the bank, and
The tactician, bro.
he is, dude. And there was a lot of guys that seemed like that were on a different level then, but his ability to do that, but not only like be a good tactician, but then also the way he, aroused the troops and was just so good at like, sensing morale and when to fight, when not to fight, when to encourage the boys, when to set an example by killing 1 out of 10 from some lot system, which is just insane. It's just things like that. It's wild to see how successful that was, and how I think to see how successful it truly was is because it lasted so long. He was able to do it. I mean, obviously he ends up dying tragically, but bro, I mean, he had a good run. I mean, especially for
Oh
that
yeah.
time
He had
period,
a
bro,
solid
for him
a
to
legendary
die,
run.
what's he 60? I mean,
He
he
was
might have
older. He
been
was, I
60.
think, in his 50s.
Yeah, so I mean, especially back then, it's like, I mean, that's a solid
It's
run.
it's a legendary run. I mean, he is the man, the myth, the legend for a reason. There's a reason people started calling themselves Caesar hereafter when they ruled
Yeah.
Rome. So yeah, so essentially what we have up to this point, we get up to 50 and 49 BC, is he has conquered the vast majority of Gaul. I think there's still like a tribe or two that's trying to do stuff, but he's good. He's like, whatever, I'll send somebody out there. He's gone over to the British Isles a couple times. The first time went terrible for him. The second time he kind of ran stuff over there, but it wasn't really worth it for him, and he's far away from home, so he has to come back, whatever. But at this point, because he is conquered Gaul, he has a huge army. He's got many, many legions, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, infantry, cavalry, all kinds of stuff going on. And they're veterans as well. So he's got arguably the most powerful army in the world. But at this point, Pompey, his co triumvirate, also has a huge army, and things have kind of soured while he's been in Gaul. They were never, they were always kind of, I guess, wary of each other because they were really the two powerful ones in the triumvirate. Crassus was just kind of another guy in there, essentially. I mean, he made his moves, don't get me wrong, but at this, Pompey conquered Spain. He was the governor of Spain and had all his military campaigns out there before Gaul. But at this point, now that Caesar's in his position, Rome considers him kind of the man, the first man of Rome, the most powerful one. He's conquered, he's done all these great things. And Pompey's kind of sour because of that. There's historians pretty much say that he was jealous, but he was also a traditionalist to a degree. He was
Yeah.
kind of with Caesar in the beginning, but he slowly got brought over by the Optimates or Optimates,
Well, he
whatever
was
they're freaking
married
called.
to his
He's
daughter,
married to Julia.
Julia. When
Yeah.
she dies, it seems there was a flip that kind of
Yeah, so
switched.
that is an important key. He was married to Caesar's daughter, sister. I can't remember which one now.
I think it's his
Um,
daughter.
so they had strong family ties, but then Julia dies, and that's tough for Pompey. He apparently did love her very much, but Caesar's enemies in Rome start kind of pulling Pompey to their side, and they're getting worried because of all the power that Caesar has amassed and because of different things he's doing where he's showing clemency to some enemies to gain, you know, this deific like persona, and or he's got mad aura, essentially, to use another modern colloquialism. So his enemies in the Senate are pushing Pompey to threaten him with war or whatever it may be to put down his arms. What they want Caesar to do is to disband his armies and come back to Rome. But when he does that, if he's not consul and he just becomes a citizen again, he will be open to essentially the Senate, his enemies coming after him and putting lawsuits essentially on his head and saying he did unconstitutional things. So for Caesar, for his political career to not end and potentially for him to not lose his life or go into exile or whatever, he has to maintain power. So he is trying to secure becoming consul before giving up his armies, and his enemies in the Senate are not letting it happen. So he makes his way from all his spots in Gaul, and in 49 BC, he approaches the Rubicon, which is essentially a river that is separating his territory of Gaul from northern Italy. And it would be seen as an act of war for him to bring his army into Italy because they're only supposed to be in Gaul, essentially. There's no reason for him to bring his army into Italy, and he's not supposed to do that. So he's faced with a decision. And this is, dude, this is something I don't know. We have to get a Denis Villeneuve movie production on Julius Caesar's life because I feel like the scene of crossing the Rubicon could just be one of the most epic things in cinematic history because he's making the decision if he crosses the Rubicon with his armies to go to civil war
Yeah, he
with
can't
Pompey
go
the
back.
Great. He can't come back from that. Like he either has to win or die or be, exiled or
That's
thrown
an
in prison,
all-in
whatever
move.
it may be. Yeah, there's no turning back. So I feel like did I kind of are we there? Do we know what we
Yeah,
need to
we're
know
there.
to
I mean,
cross the
yeah,
Rubicon?
that's solid. I mean, there's so many details that aren't that's not what we're here for. Just more the brief overview. But yeah, it is crazy that just through all the different political scheming things, I don't know, the way Philip Freeman kind of writes this, I don't know if you feel this way or not, but you're almost like, I mean, yeah, he has to do this. It's like he has no other
Yeah,
option. Like that's how he's writing it to make the reader
yeah.
feel it's like, I mean, dude, he's got to. Like, what is he gonna
When
do? Just
he
because
and
he's gonna get
Caesar believes
savaged.
he
If he
has
goes
to.
in, he's gonna get savaged. And he's done all
Yeah,
this work and it's almost gonna be undone if it's
yeah,
like for nothing. If he just
yeah, and if Philip Freeman is correct, then it's suggested that that Caesar felt like the republic is done, like it
yeah,
doesn't work, because there was a lot of progressive things he wanted to do. He wanted to make more people Roman citizens. He wanted to give people money. Like he had a lot of, I guess, socialist ideas, but just especially for the time, very progressive ideas
yeah,
to help out other people, but also in the end, just to gain Rome and himself more power. Um, so in his mind, the republic was done, and it made complete sense for him to come in and shake things up, and essentially become, a dictator, which he eventually does. But before he does that, he has to defeat Pompey. So he does that. There's a bunch of battles. There's a war. Pompey at the time, even with Caesar's more recent victories and military exploits, Pompey is still by many considered to be the greatest general alive.
yeah,
So it's like an all-out, high caliber, high game sense kind of war. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean,
Um,
Pompey was going off in the Mediterranean. I mean, he's the guy, right, who this is way before, but who goes to Jerusalem and goes into the Holy of Holies, right, and kind of messes it
yeah,
up for the Jews because
yeah,
I mean, he doesn't destroy it, but like
exactly.
he defiles it. He's like,
Yeah,
well, let me look back
just by
here.
going
I
in
want to
there.
see.
Yeah,
He's like, I just want to check out what's back there. Which I
yeah.
mean, I'm gonna be honest,
I
I would have
mean,
probably done the same. It's like, dude,
come
you're
on.
telling me I can't go back there?
It's like
I
I got
want
to
to
go back
know.
there. I just
I want to
defeated you
know.
in war. You're telling me I can't go into this room? Give me a
Yeah.
break.
I remember Tom
Um,
Holland has a bit about that in Dominion, about how
oh
he
yeah,
kind of, at least from his point, I'm pretty sure he kind of like respected it. He was like, yeah, you guys are not that he believed in it, but not in Judaism, but I think he was kind of because he doesn't kill everyone, right? He like allows them. I think he kills some people, but then he's like, hey, I can see that you guys. I can't remember
yeah,
how he phrased it, but like you guys are dedicated to this. It's not fake,
yeah.
maybe. And he kind of
And
he's like,
and
hey, I believe, I honor that.
yeah, and all of these ancient generals that were very powerful were also very smart. You didn't get to these positions these men were in without being
Yeah,
pretty brilliant, and they all understood to a degree and utilized it in different ways, but they all understood that there was a lot of power in showing clemency or mercy or even favor to certain
yeah,
groups of people for economic or political gain. So I think that was very much at play in Pompey's situation, is not wanting to upset an entire religious sect across the world because as we see throughout history, Jews were very strong, like, and had a lot of togetherness. So if you attack them in one part of the world, it's a problem for everybody, type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but
Especially
anyway,
back
so
then, though, when everything's so spread out. I mean, you can't just hit a phone call to make sure everything's good. I mean, you got to leave and you got to trust things
yeah,
really well.
yeah.
But
Um, So yeah, former allies Pompey and Caesar go to war. During this time is when Caesar goes to Alexandria, um, and gets with Cleopatra, and that is a really cool story.
what
I
a
read
side
Stacey
quest.
Schiff's biography on Cleopatra a few years ago now, but yeah, crazy side quest. I mean, Caesar's life was crazy. It's crazy that this is a side quest, but essentially he goes to Egypt, that has never been like a property or has never been annexed by Rome, but it's in a lot of ways a subsidiary of Rome just because of their economic ties. But they've got their own government going on, the Ptolemies of Egypt, which are essentially, I guess, a bunch
They're
of Greeks.
descendants of they're descendants of Alexander. Well, it's one of his generals, right? Because he dies before
Yeah, yeah,
he
it's one of
can
his,
do a
yeah,
succession plan.
and
So
it's very
Ptolemy, I
loose.
think,
Like it's
gets
debated
that.
whether or not they were really descended from what they say. But either way, the
Bro,
Ptolemies,
their
there's usually a
setup of having to marry the son and the
yeah.
daughter marrying
Brothers
each
and
other is
sisters
crazy.
constantly married each other and co-ruled, but the Ptolemy that was in power at the time, um, was not
12,
cool,
maybe.
and his sister Cleopatra, didn't like him, and she was older. Um, but anyway, he I forgot to say he follows Pompey
Bro,
to
he kills him.
Alexandria.
He, like, not unnecessarily. I
No, I'm
mean, that
saying
was one of the
Julius Caesar
sadder.
doesn't get there till after Pompey dies.
Yeah, he kills
Yeah,
him. Ptolemy kills him thinking it's, like, gonna be a favor to Caesar, and it's
yeah.
kinda like a disrespectful, or Caesar takes
Yeah,
it
so I
disrespectfully.
skipped over that, but Ptolemy is basically kinda on the run, when the war breaks down for him, and goes to Alexandria thinking that he's gonna be accepted with open arms, and then they kill him in a, like, rowboat while he's on the way to the shore. And he
Bro,
does the classic ancient person that's getting killed and throws his toga over his face so he's not, shamed in his death or whatever the heck.
yeah,
But anyway, yeah, Caesar, like, weeps apparently when he finds this out. Like, he wanted to be able to, use that for political gain, defeating him and not necessarily having him dead right off the rip. But anyway, so he's already not really liking this Ptolemy because he made that decision, and that Ptolemy's young and being controlled by like military people and government people. Caesar doesn't like any of them, and then Cleopatra's being kind of shut out, and so she sneaks in like in a linen or like a rug or
yeah,
whatever it may be to get into Caesar's quarters and pops out of a rug and is like, "Yo, let's hook up." And so yeah, they have a little soiree. They end up having a little baby Caesarion, as he's called. That's not his name, but that's like his nickname that he's more
Little
remembered
Caesar.
by. Um, and then he takes like a little tour up the Nile. Um, and then he
As
heads back to
Rome's
Rome.
in civil war.
Yeah, he's, like, in
What
the
a
middle of a
flex,
civil
dude.
war, and he
No one
hadn't
knows
gone
where
back
he's
to Rome
at,
yet.
really.
Yeah, and he's just running around with his side chick and their baby up the Nile with all their riches, and some say, like, it must have been like a show of force to make sure that people knew, like, not to mess with Rome and that they would come out here with their legions if they had to. But, he defeats Pompey. At this point, the Senate and everybody back in Rome knows there's nothing they can do because, again, if you control an army that's going to listen to you over the Senate, there's nothing anybody in Rome can do about it. You are the first man of Rome, and you will essentially decide what happens with the government. So
Yeah. It
that's what he
seems that
does.
after this, dude, he reaches that pinnacle because he gets to have his triumphs finally after, not to, like, jump too far ahead, but it seems this is where he starts making some of his, like, he made a couple blunders a little, like, before, like, in Egypt where he kinda gets surrounded and, like, barely gets out, which, I mean, is more shows his skill in my opinion, because he gets put in
Yeah.
such bad situations and somehow still survives. But when he comes back, Cleopatra's younger sister, um, they kinda instated as there's doing that, like, infighting, which I don't know if you felt this way when it was kinda describing the fighting on, like, boots on the ground fighting in Alexandria, because at that point, Caesar's surrounded, and he sent, I can't remember if it's Mark Antony or not, but he sends someone to go get troops, and so they're having to wait, dude, and it's kinda like this guerrilla warfare, bro. It
Yeah.
just,
In the
you can,
streets of Alexandria, it was
bro,
crazy, like door to door.
Pierce Brown, dude, really, like, did a good job of pulling, like, references
Mhm.
from here and, like, being motivated. to use this in the Red Rising series, man, and it's so clear, like, reading this, but I thought that was super cool. But anyway, like, one of the first blunders he makes is, like, during one of his triumphs, he has I can't remember her name, but essentially it's one of the Ptolemy daughters, the her sister.
Arsinoe.
Yeah, he has her in chains and that, and then that ends up being a bad look that people don't like, and then on top of that, he has, because at this point, I think Cato is dead too, and Cato, the whole
Mhm.
tragedy of him trying to kill himself, they save him, and then he kills himself again, it's
Yeah, pulls
tough,
out
and
his
then
entrails.
and Caesar being pissed that he did that because,
He wanted to
Cato
be able
knew
to
he was
forgive
gonna
him.
yeah, he knew he was gonna pardon him, and Cato's like, "Nah, brother, you ain't doing that to
Like, "Nah,
me."
you ain't getting me like that."
But he does that portrait that kinda shames Cato and, like, kinda misreads there because then
Yeah,
it
because the
kinda
people,
makes
even
Cato a
though
martyr.
they yeah, and he makes Philip Freeman makes the point that, like, even though the people could have accepted that Cato was at the very least on the losing side, and that is what it is. They couldn't stomach like disrespecting a respected Roman citizen who
Yeah.
valued the Republic and always fought for the good of Rome. So yeah, that was a big misread of the room, but Philip Freeman, like you said, kind of presents it as Julius making that mistake because he was angry that Cato didn't give him
Yeah.
the opportunity to forgive him and use it for political gain. But
It seems like Cato ends up being his downfall even after Cato dies because then he ends up writing
yeah,
that weird,
yeah.
like, work about Cato to try and, like,
Because
dismiss
people
him after
start
someone
like
writes a
Cicero
biography.
start making, like, biographies and start praising Cato essentially, and Caesar takes it as a personal affront, which I completely get. I mean, it makes
I get
sense that
it.
he would take it that way, but he blunders and he just shouldn't have responded, but he kinda
Yeah.
lashes out,
Which is
and that's
interesting
even
to
worse
me
for him.
because he normally, whenever he made a mistake, he would counter it by, like, making a bunch of good mistakes or good choices, and
I
it
love
seems
good
like
mistakes.
after the Egypt victory, man, it just seems like a lot of things were unnecessary, and then, especially in the next book that we're reading, the Augustus book, I guess he probably says it, Philip Freeman does in the first book, but I guess it was very frowned upon to like it was illegal, I guess, for Romans to fight Romans. So if you're going to do a triumph, like, okay, you're going to have your triumph for Gaul, you're going to have your triumph for Egypt, you're going to have your triumph for Spain, because that's you conquering other people. You're not conquering
Yeah.
Romans. But then to have a triumph, like when he goes back to Spain to knock down the rest of Pompey's like allies, and then he comes back and does a triumph for that, it's like, oh, hey, we can't like
Yeah.
celebrate you
Yeah.
like,
You
you gotta
killed
go do what
Romans.
you gotta do, and we understand that, but you can't have a triumph for it. Like,
Yeah,
that's a
it's like, "Hey,
little
dude, you're the guy, but don't you can't rub it in the entire city's face."
yeah.
So yeah, he does make some blunders, but he does do some good things as well. He increases this number of senators to represent more people that are in the growing empire. Addresses some land and debt issues, helps people out monetarily with that kind of stuff. And then one of the coolest things that I feel like is not talked about very much is he reforms the calendar, and that's essentially the one we use
Yeah.
today. It basically hasn't changed. July is named after him, August is named after Octavian or Augustus. But one of the cool things is that when he implemented the Julian calendar, I think it said that they had to stretch 1 year to, like, 400 something days to, like, just get everything on track, and it's kinda crazy, dude. It's like, that must've been a wild year. Like, I wonder if people were throwing crazy parties or just like, I feel like in their time, especially as far as, like, omens and gods, it had to have just been a wild year where they were like, "Yo, this day has never happened before," you know? It had to have been omens left and right, you know what I'm saying?
It's just wild that him of all people is the one that's like, "Hey, why are we doing this?" This man's been off just fighting on campaigns for
I mean, a lot of
40,
people say that
30
he was a
years.
genius. Like, it's hard to say
He
that
had to
about
have been.
someone from ancient history, but if it's based on his success, like, I could see it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just some of the stuff that he does, bro, it's clearly I mean, we kinda brushed over it just because there's so much that we could talk about, and this could last 3, 4 hours.
Yeah,
But dude, there's just so many engineering feats that he does. It talks about him really implementing a lot of the Roman roads throughout Gaul, which still exist today. Like, there's so many, like, lasting influences. I mean,
can you
again,
recite the Roman
even though he
roads
ends
to
up
me right now?
I cannot. I'm sorry,
My
Dad.
fault.
Um But even just his I think you briefly mentioned it, but it was a big deal that he gave Roman citizenship to these other people. I mean, he was all about loyalty. And so
Right.
these different regions that are outside of the Roman hemisphere, which are even modern day like Italy now, like Northern Italy wasn't considered Rome. Like they weren't Roman citizens, even though they'd been loyal for a long time. Like, him being kind of from his background, I think helps with that. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't he cared about power, but it was kind of weird, man. He had a niche way of how he cared about power, because I think Freeman kind of talks a little bit about, and it's tough to know now. Um, but that he probably was going to give up the dictatorship afterwards. He just wanted to go do his thing out in Syria, which, he was so close to being able to go before he gets killed.
Yeah.
He was
And I don't
so
think, I mean,
close.
he had been named dictator for life, so I think he would have stayed in power until he died regardless, but he definitely wanted to go do things and kinda get away from the Senate politics and everything of
Yeah.
Rome. Like, he would have kinda left them to their devices to a degree,
Oh, for
at
sure.
least for a time.
Yeah.
But before he gets to go to Syria, the Ides of March take place. And dude, it's such a tragic thing. Even if you like, I mean, there's no point in liking or disliking, but even if you like don't like the character of Caesar, the tragedy, the Shakespearean tragedy, literally, it makes sense that he made this into a play. It's just
Oh,
so
yeah.
crazy. But everybody knows Julius Caesar is assassinated, but essentially there's really interesting occurrences that happen leading up to this. There's just a lot of talking. Again, it's kind of reminiscent of George Washington. Um, and his whole, you know, people wanting to make him a king type stuff. But the word king, Rex, in Roman society was a bad word. Like, you don't want to
Yeah.
be called king. It's similar to being called the Dragon Reborn in Robert Jordan's world. You do not want that on your name. So but Caesar, it seems like, may have toyed with a little bit. Maybe he tried to completely shirk all of it, but a few little things occur where, Mark Antony offers him a crown at this one event they're doing. And Caesar obviously is like, no, like, I am no king. There is no king in Rome or whatever. But people debate whether or not Caesar set that up to kind of test the mood and see if they'd be cool with it. But once he saw they weren't, he pleased them by turning it away. But essentially, he's just doing all these different things and amassing powers and starting to be to starting to be called a god in one way or another, or given deific names and that type of thing. So people are just kind of getting tired of Caesar. They're like, all right, he's got too
Yeah.
much power. Cicero's like, bro, this ain't right. Like, this ain't good. We're headed to a bad place. But and a lot of people seem to have liked a lot of the reforms Caesar had made, but he was clearly starting to really thirst for more and more power. So a bunch of senators get together and decide at the next Senate meeting that actually takes place on the Ides of March, they decide, hey, we're going to stab him to death. We're going to get rid of this guy. And there's debate on whether or not his essentially right hand man at the time, who was a very big player in the life of Octavian Augustus as well, Mark Antony. There's debate whether or not he knew about it. I mean, it seems like he did. Um, Whatever. Some people wanted to kill him as well, but it ends up just being Julius Caesar. He's killed in the Senate, in the Forum, stabbed 23 times. Marcus Brutus is one of the main conspirators and assassins, and we haven't talked about him at all, but Julius Caesar saw Marcus Brutus as like an adopted son almost,
Yeah.
if history is to be believed. And there was some reason for Marcus Brutus not to like Caesar. Caesar had one of his family members killed, if I remember correctly. But either way, when Marcus Brutus approaches him with his knife to take his stab, a lot of people think that Julius Caesar's final words were "E tu, Brute," which would be "and you, Marcus," essentially. But it was actually "even you, my child," is what he said, which is, dude, even sadder, bro. The last words he said, and apparently people were there, said that it was read on his face that he was shocked, like that was the thing that shocked him. Not that he was being killed, but that Marcus Brutus was in on it. And he said, "Even you, my child," and then covered his face with his toga as he got stabbed 23 times. And supposedly only one of the
Yeah.
wounds was like a death wound. So these senators were absolutely not him. I mean, they got
I have a feeling,
22
bro,
in on him.
I have a feeling he was
Oh, dude, he was. I mean, the first guy that reached up to stab him, he grabbed his hand and like threw the guy back. But then 18 other people attacked him, so there was nothing he could do. Um, But yeah, Julius Caesar dies, and there's obviously a bunch of crazy aftermath, but we won't really get into that because
Dude, imagine if you could
the
just
man's dead.
teleport back in time to just be like a fly on a wall for like certain events.
Yeah,
I mean, we'd have to learn
truly
Greek
crazy.
or Latin, I
Whatever they
guess.
spoke. Yeah, Latin. I think they
We
spoke
like
several
totally
languages.
we like get a chance to go back, totally just forget that they don't speak English. And we're like, wait, what's
Well,
going on?
like,
Uh,
was that E too brute? I thought you didn't say that.
yeah, for real. You get to have a
Um,
conversation with Caesar, and then you realize, like, oh wait, and he
what's crazy
kills you
too
because
about the Ides of March, and this may be propaganda, like stuff that people made up, but supposedly his wife woke up the morning of the Ides of March and told him she had had a bad dream, pretending horrible things were going to happen that day. And then a like seer, medium type person came up to him in the street and told him to beware the Ides of March, and he was like, "I'm Caesar." Uh, and then he
he
died.
had
He got
survived.
killed.
Yeah, he had survived too many things.
And the last thing we'll
But
say about his life, as far as just specifically about him, to lead us into what will probably be another episode soon, is come to find out when he died, he had left in his will for 2/3 or a third, 2/3, I think, or maybe half. Essentially, the vast majority or a majority of all of his wealth, as well as his name, was passed to none other than Octavian, uh, who later becomes Augustus.
Gaius.
Gaius Octavian.
Mm.
So yeah, that is a very brief, terrible overview of Julius Caesar's life that we learned. Yeah, crazy guy. Would
That's
you say he's the greatest man that ever lived?
dude. I don't know. That's what's tough, bro. Because I mean, I'm already kind of feeling hyped up for Augustus, dude.
See, the thing about Augustus though, bro, is he's not him on the battlefield.
Yeah,
Like that's something
he's like
that's
sickly.
clear.
So
He's like
yeah.
always like, "Oh, bro, I'm sick. I can't. Like, y'all take care of it though." Like,
Dude,
I
there's
can't
even a
make it,
part
bro.
where I think he wanted to go on campaign, and Caesar was like,
Like,
"We don't need you
hold
getting
up.
sick, brother. I need you carrying the throne,
I feel
dude."
like he's Alexei. He's Tsar Nicholas's son. He's just fragile
Yeah.
and can't do anything.
Father, please.
Um, but yeah, I mean Augustus, from what I remember that I have read about his life and who he was, I mean he was more so revered as a god than Julius was. So
Yeah, he
we got a
seems
lot to get
more.
into.
Yeah, but no, I do think that his moxie must have been insane because we kind of briefly went over it. But another thing that truly stuck out to me is there's the moment when he's been um I can't remember if I think he's been off in Egypt, but he has to go back again, maybe. I can't remember, but essentially he left most of his legions up in northern Italy, Gaul region, and it's been like 2 or 3 years. They're supposed to be like relieved of duty, get their like farmland pension, all that, and they haven't gotten all that. And so while they're still loyal to Caesar, they start getting rowdy, and they're the ones who like push up onto the city and they're like, hey, we need to speak to Caesar. Like we were making all these demands. And then as soon as he shows up, they're like, forget about that. Like, we just want to be dismissed. We just want to be dismissed. And he's like, okay, you want to be dismissed? And then he calls them by like citizen or something instead of, I guess,
Yeah,
soldier or whatever term that he
yeah.
normally
He
had that was
starts
like
calling
kind
him
of
citizen once
a
he says they're
hardcore. And they're like,
discharged.
and they're like, wait,
I'm
what?
not no
And then
citizen.
and they're like, he says something about how, well, I'll just use these other newer recruits to like walk the triumph whenever I conquer Egypt or wherever he was
Yeah,
going
he's
next.
like, I'll
And
take
that's when
them.
they're like, no, please, no, actually, we're fine.
They
We want to
literally
still be in your
offer.
service.
They're like, take 1 in 10 of all of us, and we will execute them. Please forgive
To
us.
show our
They were like
loyalty.
offering up human sacrifices to apologize, and
Dude,
Caesar's like, "Mm, okay, I'll let you come, but
yeah.
don't do that again." It's just like,
It's just
bro, how
bro,
did
to
he have
have
the
that
power over them?
dude, that's what I'm saying. He had to have been just that guy, bro. Because
Well, dude,
these are
and
battle hardened dudes from Gaul. Like, I mean, obviously he was on the front lines with them. He clearly was an exceptional leader. Like someone who led by
yeah,
example, who was fierce, who like was clearly capable because I mean he got them in and out of such like tight situations. Like he's someone they looked up to and also was him. Like so
one dude, and there had never been a person in history like him before. So they were around someone who was I mean, he was literally the only person they could compare him to was Alexander the Great, who
yeah.
who they essentially they didn't worship, but historically, like, that was the guy. And that's the only person they could compare him to. He was doing things unheard of, bro. We didn't even discuss how he took his army over the freaking Alps
Yeah, quickly.
in BC, bro. Took them through the Alps, bro. I wouldn't make it through
Napoleon
the
got
Alps on foot today. I don't care what resources you give me. You can give me all the best equipment for survival possible, bro. If you send me over the Alps, you're never gonna see me again.
dude,
And he took his
you
whole army through there.
bro, but you didn't have Caesar leading you, bro. He would have hyped you up, man. He would have
He
gotten you
would have,
going.
bro. He'd have been like,
He
"Hey,
would have
do I
figured
need
something
to
out.
cut off your hands, or are you going over the Alps?" If he didn't instill loyalty, he instilled fear at the very least. But yeah, I feel like there's so much more to talk about. I mean, this book itself is a pretty general, brief overview, so there's so much more to get into. I have this one book, this huge book, The Landmark Julius Caesar, The Complete Works, Gallic War, Civil War, Alexandrian War, African War, Spanish War. And it is this huge, essentially a textbook that has all of his writings and then translations, breakdowns, descriptions, maps, references. Like, I mean, it's something I don't even know what. Like, I don't know what you would read this for other than an absolute love of all things Julius Caesar. So I say all that to say this is not only is it huge, but it's almost 1,000 pages, and it's huge. Like, it's not a normal size book, and it's just all about Julius Caesar. So
Mm.
kind of just to go back to, it's kind of crazy how much we do know about people from over 2,000 years ago. But anyway, is there anything else to say about Julius Caesar?
No, man, it's fun. It's been fun though. I'm excited to continue this. This definitely gives me more on my weekly, if now not probably by if not 3 weekly, 3 times a week, just times where I'll just sit and think about the Roman Empire. And we didn't even talk
Yeah,
about the
dude.
buy aspect of Julius, so we'll have to leave that for another time.
That'll be for a special episode behind the paywall.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys in the next one. Please do not engage with this video at all. Goodbye.
See ya.